Some wild places are very much on the Instagram hot list, while others are very much off the beaten path and known by only a very few people. And the place I'm visiting in this video is very much the latter. I'm here to spend a bit of time losing myself taking photographs for a while and discuss the therapeutic elements to photography which have benefited me immensely over several decades.
My name's Feargus, and this is the middle of nowhere.
Ooh. Oh, it's hot. Today is the first day of 2025, above 20 degrees up here. Oh, this gorge is a really well-kept secret. I've never been here before. It looked interesting when I was looking around on Google, and it is very much exceeding my expectations. What a beautiful little spot where you've got all of these old gnarly Scots pines growing out of the walls and lots of young, fairly mature birch trees that are gradually recolonizing this area after centuries of being munched on by mammals. I've just come up here on a day trip. It's quite out of the way. It's about 15 kilometers on a private dirt track, and this place isn't on any guidebooks. It's a well-kept secret, and there's only a very basic animal trail leading from the private road down into the gorge. Now today is the first day of National Mental Health Awareness Week in the UK for this year, and I wanted to do something around that topic. Not something with lots of stories of how miserable I tend to get. This time I wanted to do something much more positive. I don't know about you, but I have a very, very active mind, and it's very, very difficult to quieten it down, and it tends to generate a lot of wonderful ideas, a lot of negative ideas sometimes as well, but there's always something going on. And it's very difficult for me to shut that voice up in my head. My internal monologue is extremely active. And that tends to lead to an awful lot of stresses, which has a negative effect on how I view the world. One thing that has been massively touted over the last few years, and so many people swear by it now, is mindfulness. So mindfulness meditation, or just mindfulness in your everyday life, whereby you try to focus on the present moment, something I am terrible at. I simply go into default mode of thinking forward, back, imagining other places and so forth pretty much all the time if I don't focus. Now, in some of my lower mental health episodes, numerous times I've tried doing mindfulness meditation practice, but I've never found it to be all that helpful, and I've always tended to get quite irritated with myself because I couldn't calm my wandering mind. And I know that other people have this problem. Mindfulness works for some, it doesn't work for others. But then I started thinking about the things that do make me feel better, namely going out into the wilderness. But one thing that I always do, pretty much, whenever I go out into the wilderness, is take photographs. I've been seriously practicing photography for almost 30 years now. And I got thinking about when I'm out doing that, what's going on in my head? And I realized that that is a form of mindfulness. It's one of the things in life which completely focuses my attention on the task that I am doing. And when I'm in that zone, it's extremely beneficial psychologically. So I've come here with my camera gear, and I'm just going to spend maybe an hour, because that's all the time that I can really spare today, wandering around and going down the gorge gradually, taking photographs of the wider perspective, but also taking photographs of the details. And once I finish taking photographs, I'll have a little bit more of a chat about what it is I'm talking about and going into a bit more detail about the benefits. So, come on. I really was not expecting such a dramatic, deep, steep-sided gorge. I really need to come back here with a wetsuit and, well, at least some neoprene boots so that I can have a much more effective way of getting through it, because it's quite tricky going. But I have managed to keep my feet relatively dry. What a stunning place that people just do not see, people don't experience. Hidden gem. I always, without fail, end up massively underestimating the amount of time that I need to shoot pictures and video. So I haven't got an awful lot of pictures while I've been scrambling around down here, but I've got a few, and I will endeavor to come back another time when I'm not making a video, just to concentrate on the photographs. But the priority today is to make this video because I think it might be helpful to some people. And that's really the key. The fact that I do lose myself just taking a handful of pictures and forget about time, forget about all of the other stuff that's going on in my life, in the world beyond and so forth. That's the point. It focuses you on what you're doing, on what's in front of you. It makes you observe what you're seeing around you in much more detail. It makes you notice things that you probably wouldn't notice most of if you were simply wandering around. Certainly in my case, with my mind wandering like a race car, I am generally somewhere else in my head if I'm not focusing on taking pictures. I've been taking photographs for a long time, and it's certainly a very long time which I've been very consciously aware of what I'm actually trying to put in the picture, whether I'm composing it in a certain way. You know, it's more of an automatic process at this point. Where is the light? Which way is the sun shining in? What's it doing to a particular object which might be standing out in the frame? How to arrange the frame in terms of where I'm putting myself. Do I need to get up higher? Do I need to bend down? Do I need to lie down on the ground? It's all a process of focusing on what you're doing. And there is a name for that in the field of psychology. It's called flow. So flow is a state of mind which you get into when you are completely focused on what you're doing. All of your brain's processes are devoted to the task at hand. So it's that really sweet spot between boredom and overstimulation. And if you can nail it in that state, then time just dissolves away. All of the other stuff in the world dissolves away, and it is very, very, very mindful. Artists and creatives are generally very familiar with this state. You know, writers will be very much, when they're in the zone, they are very much focused on what it is that is coming from their head onto the page. You know, musicians, when they are really in the zone, they will just give themselves mentally to the process of what they are doing in that moment. Nothing else matters. And there are a bunch of studies out there which show that people who experience flow regularly have generally lower rates of mental health issues. For me, it's all about creativity. Creativity is what has saved me. Creativity and curiosity. That it just keeps me going, even in my worst holes. You know, the curiosity and the creativity, some level of interest in something that is going on that I want to focus on, has been my salvation, really. And I really feel for people who do not have that innately. But saying that, you know, my lowest points in my life have been when I have been cut off from the kind of creativity which is very, very beneficial. So whether I have been in a job which I hate, or in a situation where I can't go to do the things that I want, get out into the wilderness, take photographs, shoot videos. Even editing, I find, is quite a mindful process, but I do tend to get stressed editing. And of course, if you're out doing something like this and focusing on nature and walking around, and I had to cycle for about 15 kilometers to get here, physical activity is also extremely beneficial for mental health. That is unambiguous in the scientific studies that have been done. And combining the two keeps me on a real level. That's why I make these videos as well. The creative process, the focusing on, right, I need to get a certain set of shots in order to put together the sequence. I'm visualizing it in my head, and then I just go for it and lose myself. We live in a society in which we are expected to operate on a much higher level, much faster than at any time in human history. A small percentage of people can thrive on that. A lot of people make do and get on with it without collapsing, but it might not be optimal. And other people cannot tolerate that in a sustained fashion. So doing something mindful, whether it's photography, which is what I do, it forces you to slow down. If you have the time, if you can make the time, it forces you to slow down and focus on the minute details. You know, there's a beetle over there. There's a really, really nicely formed, gnarly branch on that tree up there, or whatever it might be. Now, because I've always done it, use a big chunky SLR camera, but you don't have to use a fancy camera. I know people who spend hours out just with their smartphones. Smartphone cameras are remarkable these days, just looking for little details around them, particularly in nature, and they just find it helpful for themselves. So certainly if you're creative, if you're visually creative, you like going out into nature, you have a tendency to take pictures, and you might want to improve your mental well-being, I would certainly recommend trying photography. And it would be especially mindful at the beginning, because you have to focus so hard on mastering the basic technicalities. Beyond that steep learning curve, there's a real sweet spot where you feel relatively competent, and you can just explore the world and gradually develop your own visual style and approach. But the most critical thing is to take your time. Take your time and observe the little details and the big details, and observe the patterns of nature. You know, keep an eye on what is good at a particular time of year. Right now it's the spring, and there's lots of young, very, very colorful, bright green leaves around, and lots of wildflowers. So that is something that I can focus on now. In the autumn, you will have the beautiful colors of the leaves as they turn and start to fall. In the winter, if you're lucky, you can go out on a snowy day, even if it's not snowy. Wet or fog can bring its own things. I mean, a forest is magical in the fog, in the mist, because it adds so much depth to the trees as you look into the distance. So that's my take for this year's Mental Health Week. It's been 2 weeks since I put up my last video because I wanted to time it for this particular day at the start of National Mental Health Week. So it's only going to be a week until my next video. And in the meantime, I hope you get a bit of time outside. I hope the sun is still shining, and everybody have a lovely week in between. Like, subscribe if you haven't done, and share the video. Thank you very much.
Okay, I couldn't resist coming back up here. This is about a week after the previous footage, because I was just curious about what there is on the other parts of the river and the gorge, and I have found the most spectacular unpublicized waterfall that I have ever seen anywhere in the world. This is just mind-blowingly beautiful. I can't believe it. Amazing what you can find if you take a chance and don't follow the guidebooks. Okay, I know it's loud, but I didn't bring my microphone, which would drown out most of the background, because I wasn't intending to do any speaking to camera today. I was just going to get some extra fill-in shots for the video, and otherwise have a quiet day shooting some more pictures. But this is just incredible. The plunge pool at the bottom of the waterfall looks deep and cold and is absolutely stunning. The thing that really gets me, just thinking about it, it's been so dry lately that the water levels in the rivers are really low. So this is the waterfall at its quietest. Sometime in the autumn, when there's been some really heavy rain, I need to come back here, and this will be off the scale incredible. I don't know. Watch this space.